I know that you're a busy man and you're already doing, you're always speaking at the University of Michigan, I saw.
Oh yes, all over the country.
Yeah. How long
And
have you been
outside.
doing that, speaking everywhere?
Well, I retired from my paying job in 1994, and I've been doing this full time, running the Holocaust Center and speaking since then.
Give us a preview of what you're going to be talking about tonight.
I'll be talking about the Holocaust, how it came into being. After all, World War I was over, the war to end all wars. How we got from there, through a step-by-step process, through propaganda, lies, and chimeras, to making murder not only acceptable, but patriotic. How murder became a badge of honor. How we went in a very short period of time by ideas that people thought up, by lies, fabrications about other people. How 6 million Jews were murdered. How 50 million people died during a period of time during World War II to try and right the wrongs of millions of people. And how it applies to today.
That's exactly what I was going to ask you. Do you see any similarities between what you went through in the early 40s and what's happening today?
Oh yes, same lies, repackaged.
In what way?
We hate the same way. We fabricate stories. We even have people in Congress of the United States who promote hatred and destruction.
What do you think that's doing to the country?
Well, unless we somehow figure out what we're doing and have some changes of thought, I think us and the rest of the world is going down the drain. I mean, something happened the other day. There's a country called Iran. 83%, 114 countries in the UN praised Iran for its humanity, for its tremendous work it's doing to give equality to women. The most bizarre idea. And that becomes fact because it's voted on by the UN. This insanity must stop.
Was there a point in recent memory that what was happening today reminded you of things you'd been through in the past, or has it been gradual?
It was gradual, because right after the war, because of the Holocaust, anti-Semitism and hatred of the Jews went to a somewhat quiescent period. But since then, what has happened is the extreme right, which has always been anti-Semitic and hatred of Jews, have been joined by the extreme left. And the third piece was joined into that by fundamental Islam. So this unholy alliance has now created an atmosphere and propaganda that demonizes the Jew. The one country that is a democracy in the Middle East gets voted on by the UN for violation of human rights more than any other country in the world. In fact, if you combine all the countries of the world and all the human rights violations, it's less, according to the UN, that takes place in Israel today. This bizarre insanity. One way of looking at it is the inmates took over the asylum. It's sad and scary.
You started back in the 90s a program that would allow young people to adopt a survivor of the Holocaust. What impact do you think that's had?
Well, it's an important aspect to it because Holocaust survivors today are far and few in between because we have reached ages where we're disappearing at an alarming rate. And I realized that 25 years ago that that's going to be happening. And so the question was, how will the story of Irving Roth, or how will the story of my grandfather, who was murdered in Auschwitz, will it be told? And will he exist? And so I said, there's a need for other than simply being written in a book, which I've done, other than sitting on a shelf someplace and collecting dust. I would like to somehow impart this information to a human who will not only understand, but feel some connection to me, to my grandfather, so that he can tell his great-grandchildren. So for the next century or so, in some minds, in some events, some assemblies in school, their existence will be noted. Their ideas, their soul, and their spirit will have an effect on them.
When you were in one of the concentration camps, what was that like? Physically, emotionally, mentally, what was that like?
It was extremely difficult, certainly physically. The labor that I was doing, I was in Auschwitz. I was 14 years old when I got there, turned 15. I worked in the fields, draining swamps and plowing the fields of Auschwitz on a very meager diet for long hours under the watchful eye of men with submachine guns. It was scary, it was difficult, it was unpleasant, but I wanted to live.
Did you have to fight to live?
I had to remind myself that someday, soon I hope, this madness will be over.
That day came.
And eventually, the madness was over. The sad part is that the same madness is returning with a vengeance in 2019.
In different clothes, right?
Just repackaged. And that's the scary part.
What do we need to do as a society to avoid the same fate?
First and foremost, we must understand what happened. We must understand history and the result of decisions that people made. Individuals, countries, leadership, they made decisions. How those decisions resulted in evil. How letting a bully continue on his quest for victims, how he not only allowed it, but kind of helped him along. We must understand, we must learn from that. We cannot repeat the same mistakes, because the same mistakes will create the same problems. What's amazing is that in physical science, we repeat an experiment once or twice, and we get the same results, and therefore it becomes an axiomatically, it's going to be happening. You go over to the wall, you flip the switch on, the light goes on. Shut it off, goes off. And now we understand. We expect that. Yet in social science, we think doing the same thing will give you different results. Not true. It's not true, it just isn't so. So we need to learn from history. We need to keep it historically correct. Facts, let facts remain.
You lived that history.
I lived that history, and I can talk about that history. Yet there are people today by the millions who say this never happened. And we call these people countries. We call these people leaders. We praise them. We support them. Total insanity. This needs to stop.
You've done a great job. Stay right here just a minute. I have everything I need. If I could just get 2 shots of DNA. So we'll just keep talking. He's just going to move.